Welcome back to the deep dive. We're here, as always, to sift through those sources you send us, pull out the core knowledge, and basically give you the fast track to being really informed.
And today, wow, we've got a big one. We're looking at whales.
Yeah, these gentle giants of the ocean,
Yeah.
but maybe not so gentle in their impact, right?
Exactly. It's easy to think of them as just, huge animals needing and saving symbols. But the sources we looked at, especially around this concept called area of the whale song, they paint a totally different picture.
A reframing, really.
Completely.
Yeah.
Whales aren't just passive things we protect. They're active, crucial, engineers of our whole climate system.
Okay, so that's our mission today, moving past the sort of endangered species poster child image and seeing them as these fundamental guardians of the planet. We really need to get our heads around how their survival is, maybe surprisingly, linked directly to the air we breathe, like every second.
It's this amazing loop, isn't it? You've got these massive animals, tiny microorganisms, and the global climate all tied together.
Inescapably linked.
Yeah, and if that first link, the whale, falters, well, the rest kind of starts to wobble too.
That makes sense. Let's kick off with something that, honestly, I found pretty mind-boggling in the sources.
Oh, yeah. What was that?
Well, you ask someone where oxygen comes from, they say trees, right? The Amazon, maybe forests generally.
Sure, standard answer.
But this deep dive shows whales are essential oxygen makers. How does a giant whale diving deep help us breathe up here?
Right, it seems counterintuitive, but it comes down to something called nutrient cycling. Whales are like, the engine's driving this whole thing.
Nutrient cycling. Explain that a bit.
Okay, think of the ocean in layers. The surface gets the sunlight, which life needs, but it tends to run low on key nutrients, things like nitrogen, iron.
Oh, okay.
But the deep ocean, it's packed with those nutrients. Dark, cold, but rich down there.
So you've got the food downstairs, but the sunlight and the plankton that need it are upstairs. A bit of a problem.
Exactly, a disconnect. And whales, they bridge that gap. They dive sometimes thousands of feet to feed in the nutrient-rich depths.
Okay. Loading up.
Loading up, exactly. Then they come back to the surface to breathe. And crucially, when they're at the surface, they release waste.
Here we go. The slightly less glamorous part.
Maybe, but maybe the most important part. This isn't just mixing water. They are delivering vital resources right where they're needed most. The sunlit zone, the euphotic zone. They're like the planet's most efficient deep-sea fertilizer delivery service.
And this brings us to the whale waste itself. You mentioned fertilizer.
Yes, the sources specifically mention whale poop. It sounds funny, but it's incredibly rich in precisely those limited nutrients, iron and nitrogen.
So when they release it at the surface.
Boom! Instant fertilizer bomb. It basically turbocharges the phytoplankton growth right there. It removes the brakes on primary production.
And that primary production, that's the phytoplankton, those tiny little plants in the ocean.
The very base of the marine food web, yes. But critically for us, phytoplankton generate, maybe 50 to 80% of the Earth's oxygen? Somewhere in that range.
Wow, that much.
Yeah, it's huge. So the whales, through this fertilization process, are directly boosting the output of these microscopic oxygen factories.
That is staggering, truly. We're relying on whale poop to feed the plankton that makes the air we breathe.
It sounds wild when you say it like that, but yeah.
So when the sources say, every breath we take carries a trace of the whale song, it stops being just poetry.
It becomes literal, a description of, biological interdependence.
Yeah.
And think about the scale. A single blue whale can eat, 4 tons of krill a day? Imagine the nutrient cycling involved in that, day after day.
Constant delivery.
Exactly. The health of the whale population isn't just about whales. It's a direct indicator, a barometer for the health of our atmosphere.
Okay, so they're fertilizing the ocean for oxygen production. That's huge. But their actual physical bodies play a role too, right, in terms of climate?
Absolutely. Let's unpack that. Beyond oxygen, they're massive players in managing carbon. Climate guardians, as you said.
Living carbon storage solutions, basically.
That's a great way to put it. It's a 2-part process, and it's incredibly effective, all natural, no human tech needed.
Okay, part 1, while they're alive.
Right. While a whale is swimming around, living its life, it's accumulating enormous amounts of carbon in its body. Carbon drawn from the atmosphere up through the food chain into its, everything. Muscle, blubber, bones.
Locked away.
Locked away for decades, potentially over a century for some species. Think of a large whale as a biological carbon vault swimming around.
Incredible, but then there's the end of the life cycle. That's where the really long-term storage happens, right?
Yeah.
Part 2.
Yes, the whale fall. This is
Ah,
critical. When a great whale dies naturally, its enormous body could be over 100 tons, doesn't just float, it sinks
all the way down.
all the way down to the abyssal plain, miles deep. This journey can take weeks, even months. And it takes all that carbon, hundreds of years worth maybe, right out of the surface ocean and the atmosphere.
Okay, but does it stay down there? Doesn't it just decompose and release the carbon back into the water?
Ah, good question. That's where the depth is key. It sinks into the really deep, cold, oxygen-poor parts of the ocean. Decomposition is incredibly slow down there.
Right.
Specialized organisms colonize the carcass, feeding on it for years, sometimes decades. But the skeleton, the bones, they persist much longer. And that carbon, locked in the bones and eventually the surrounding sediment, plus the life that bloomed around the fall, it's effectively removed from the active carbon cycle for, well, centuries.
Centuries, wow. Just naturally sequestered.
Exactly. No pipelines, no injection wells, the ocean's own system. Every single mature whale is essentially an active climate solution, both in life and in death.
A living climate solution. That's powerful.
It really is. You combine the living storage and the long-term whale fall storage. The conclusion is pretty clear.
Which brings us to something maybe even more surprising, potentially controversial, the economics of it all. Because scientists actually try to put a price tag on this, on these ecosystem services.
They did. The sources point to work by marine conservation economists, even drawing support from places like the IMF trying to quantify it. And the number they came up with is, well, it's pretty staggering.
What are we talking about?
The estimate is that one great whale, over its lifetime, is worth millions of dollars.
Millions. For one whale.
Millions, purely for the services it provides to climate stability and atmospheric health.
Okay, we have to be crystal clear here. This is not the old value, right? Not the price for its meat or oil that led to whaling.
Absolutely not. Emphatically not. This is the calculated value of its function. The oxygen it helps produce via plankton, the carbon it sequesters in its body and through the whale fall, even the boost it gives to fisheries through nutrient cycling.
It's like the cost of replacing those services if the whales weren't doing it for free.
Precisely. What would it cost us to artificially achieve that level of oxygen production or carbon capture? That's the kind of thinking behind that multi-million-dollar figure.
Which then throws our history into pretty sharp relief, doesn't it? If a living whale is worth millions as a climate engineer, what were we doing?
Well, that's what the source material called the glitchy reflection. It's looking back at how we saw whales.
How did we see them?
For centuries, purely as commodities. Oil for lamps, corset stays, meat, immediate tangible products you could sell.
Short-term value.
Exactly. And that immediate exploitable value completely blinded us to the much larger abstract long-term value they provided for our own survival, the ecosystem services.
The glitch was prioritizing the quick buck over, well, planetary stability.
Yeah.
We hunted them nearly to extinction.
Seeing them as resources to be mined, not partners in keeping the planet habitable.
And it had real consequences, didn't it? Beyond just fewer whales.
Oh, measurable ones. Fewer whales meant less fertilization, less plankton, less oxygen. Fewer whales meant less carbon stored, less carbon sunk. The system was weakened.
So the takeaway here is pretty stark.
It really is. Protecting whales isn't just about saving a magnificent species. It's fundamentally about protecting ourselves. Their survival is, you could argue, a climate necessity.
It reframes every conservation effort, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You're not just saving an animal. You're helping restore a vital part of Earth's operating system.
Yeah, the connection is just so direct when you look at the science.
Yeah.
The sheer amount of co-years they handle, the nutrients they move. It makes the case for conservation undeniable. They're fundamental.
Okay, so let's wrap up this deep dive on Area the Whale song. The message seems crystal clear. Whales are essentially life support.
Life support for the planet.
They really do underpin life on Earth in ways we're only just fully appreciating. Now, obviously, not everyone can become a marine biologist, but the sources did give some practical actions, right? Things listeners can actually do.
Yeah, 3 pretty straightforward things based on this understanding. First, communication. Just shift the story.
How so?
Share one thing you learned today. Maybe about the oxygen link or the carbon storage. Talk about whales not just as victims, but as these active guardians. Changing the narrative changes how people see them, how they support conservation.
Makes sense. Change the story. What's number 2?
Actively support whale conservation groups. Put your resources, whether time or money, towards organizations working on marine protection, anti-whaling efforts, habitat restoration. That's a direct investment in oxygen and carbon storage.
Right, direct action. And the third,
Choose ocean-friendly products. Basically, reduce pollution. Less chemical runoff, less plastic waste. It makes a difference.
how does that connect back directly?
Healthier surface waters mean healthier phytoplankton. If they're not being choked by plastic or poisoned by chemicals, they can do their job better. It strengthens that whole oxygen-producing backbone we talked about.
Got it. So less pollution equals healthier plankton equals more oxygen supported by the whale's fertilization. It all connects.
It all connects back to that deep blue engine. Protect the giants, protect the system.
Which perfectly captures that theme. When whales thrive.
The ocean breathes. Simple as that.
That is definitely a powerful thought to hold on to. So we'll leave you with one final thing to mull over, building on all this.
Yep.
If the science is telling us, with backing from serious economists, that a single great whale is worth millions of dollars just for the essential services we need, like breathable air, like a stable climate, then what's the real cost, the ultimate cost, of the kind of environmental blindness that lets us sacrifice those essential multi-million-dollar services for maybe just immediate short-term gain?
That's a heavy question. It forces you to think about value differently.
Right. So maybe challenge yourself.
Yeah.
Think about your own connection, your own interdependence with that deep ocean. Because what happens to the giants down there? Well, it really does affect the air you're breathing right now.